Hello, boys and girls. I want to continue, hopefully maybe finish chapter 1 of The Magician's Nephew. I'm going to back up a little bit. Now that they were talking by daylight in the attic instead of by candlelight in the smuggler's cave, remember where the smuggler's cave was? It was up in Polly's attic. She had made a little special place. It seemed much less likely that the empty house would be haunted. When they had measured the attic, they had to get a pencil and do a sum. They both got different answers to it at first, and even when they agreed, I am not sure they got it right. They were in a hurry to start the exploration. "We mustn't make a sound," said Polly as they climbed in behind the cistern. Because it was such an important occasion, they took a candle each. Polly had a good store of these in her cave. It was very dark and dusty and drafty, and they stepped from rafter to rafter without a word, except when they whispered to one another, "We're opposite your attic now," or "This must be halfway through our house." And neither of them stumbled, and the candles didn't go out. And at last they came where they could see a little door in the brick wall on the right. There was no bolt or handle on the side of it, of course, for the door had been made for getting in, not for getting out. But there was a catch, as there often is on the inside of a cupboard door, which they felt sure they would be able to turn. "Shall I?" said Dickory. "I'm game if you are," said Polly, just as she had said before. Both felt that it was becoming very serious, but neither would draw back. Dickory pushed around the catch with some difficulty. The door swung open, and the sudden daylight made them blink. Then, with a great shock, they saw that they were looking not into a deserted attic, but into a furnished room. But it seemed empty enough. It was dead silent. Couldn't hear a thing. Polly's curiosity got the better of her. She blew out her candle and stepped out into the strange room, making no more noise than a mouse. It was shaped, of course, like an attic, but furnished as a sitting room or a family room. Every bit of the walls were lined with shelves, and every bit of the shelves were filled with books. A fire was burning in the grate. You remember, it was a very cold, wet summer that year. And in front of the fireplace, with its back toward them, was a high-backed armchair. Between the chair and Polly, and filling most of the middle of the room, was a big table piled with all sorts of things. Printed books, and books of the sort you write in, and ink bottles, and pens, and sealing wax, and a microscope. But what she noticed first was a bright red wooden tray with a number of rings on it. They were in pairs, a yellow one and a green one together, then a little space. Then another yellow one and another green one. They were no bigger than ordinary rings, and no one could help noticing them because they were so bright. They were the most beautiful, shiny little things you can imagine. If Polly had been a very little younger, she would have wanted to put one in her mouth. The room was so quiet that you noticed the ticking of the clock at once. And yet, as she now found, it was not absolutely quiet try that again. It was not absolutely quiet either. There was a very, very faint humming sound. If vacuum cleaners had been invented in those days, Polly would have thought it was the sound of a hoover being worked a long way off, several rooms away and several floors away. But it was a nicer sound than that, a more musical tone, only so faint you could hardly hear it. It's all right, there's no one here, said Polly over her shoulder to Diggory. She was speaking above a whisper now, and Diggory came out, blinking and looking extremely dirty, as indeed Polly was too. This is no good, he said. It's not an empty house at all. We'd better leave before anyone comes. What do you think those are? Said Polly, pointing at the colored rings. Oh, come on, said Diggory, the sooner. He never finished what he was going to say, for at that moment something happened. The high-backed chair in front of the fire moved suddenly, and there rose up out of it, like a pantomime demon coming up out of a trap door, the alarming form of Uncle Andrew. They were not in the empty house at all. They were in Diggory's house and in the forbidden study. Both children said, "Ah!" and realized their terrible mistake. They felt they ought to have known all along that they hadn't gone nearly far enough. Remember, Uncle Andrew is Diggory's uncle. Uncle Andrew was tall and very thin. He had a long, clean-shaven face with a sharply pointed nose and extremely bright eyes and a great tousled mop of gray hair. Diggory was quite speechless, for Uncle Andrew looked 1,000 times more alarming than he had ever looked before. Polly was not so frightened yet, but she soon was, for the very first thing Uncle Andrew did was walk across to the door of the room, shut it, and turned the key in the lock. There walked in the attic that Uncle Andrew had made into his private study that, remember, his aunt had told him never go up to his secret study. Then he turned around, and he fixed the children with his bright eyes, and he smiled, showing all of his teeth. Can you smile showing all of your teeth? Not like this. Like this. Happy smile. There, he said. Now my fool of a sister can't get at you. It was dreadfully unlike anything a grown-up would be expected to do. Polly's heart came into her mouth, and she and Diggory started backing toward the little door they had come in by. Uncle Andrew was too quick for them. He got behind them and shut that door too and stood in front of it. Is this a good thing, boys and girls, or is this a scary thing? We're going to have to read some more to find out. Then he rubbed his hands together and made his knuckles crack. He had very long, beautifully white fingers. I am delighted to see you, he said. 2 children are just what I wanted. But please, Mr. Ketterly, it's almost my dinner time and I've got to go home. Will you let us out, please? Not just yet, said Uncle Andrew. Uncle Andrew, this is too good an opportunity to miss. I wanted 2 children. You see, I'm in the middle of a great experiment. I've tried it on a guinea pig, and it seemed to work. But then a guinea pig can't tell you anything, and you can't explain to it how to come back. Look here, Uncle Andrew, said Diggory. It really is dinner, and they'll be looking for us in a moment. You must let us out. Must, said Uncle Andrew. Diggory and Polly glanced at one another. They dared not say anything, but the glances meant, isn't this dreadful? And we must humor him. If you let us go for our dinner now, said Polly, we would come back after dinner. Ah, but how do I know that you would, said Uncle Andrew with a cunning smile. Then he seemed to change his mind. Very well, he said. If you really must go, I suppose you must. I can't expect 2 youngsters like you to find it much fun talking to an old buffer like me. He sighed and went on. You've no idea how lonely I am sometimes. But no matter. Go to your dinner. But I must give you a present before you go. It's not every day that I see a little girl in my dingy old study, especially, if I may say so, such a very attractive young lady as yourself. Polly began to think he might not really be mad after all. "Wouldn't you like a ring, my dear?" said Uncle Andrew to Polly. "Do you mean one of those yellow or green ones?" said Polly. "How lovely!" "Not a green one," said Uncle Andrew. "I'm afraid I can't give the green ones away, but I'd be delighted to give you any of the yellow ones with my love. Come and try one on." Polly had now quite got over her fright and felt sure that the old gentleman was not mad, and there was certainly something strangely attractive about those bright rings. She moved over to the tray. "Why, I declare," she said, "that humming noise gets louder here. It's almost as if the rings were making it." "What a funny fancy, my dear," said Uncle Andrew with a laugh. It sounded a very natural laugh, but Diggory had seen an eager, almost greedy look on his face. "Polly, don't be a fool," he shouted. "Don't touch them." It was too late. Exactly as he spoke, Polly's hands went out to touch one of the rings, and immediately, without a flash or noise or warning of any sort, there was no Polly. Diggory and his uncle were alone in the room. Ta-da! That is the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 is Diggory and his uncle. So, if you've got some, I want you to summarize this to your parents. Maybe they can enjoy listening to their story too. Would you be able to summarize this? To tell the who, what, where, when, why? If I was going to summarize chapter 1, my summary would be something like this. Now the title, The Wrong Door, makes sense. Polly and Diggory met each other on a cold, wet summer day. We don't have cold, wet summer days here very often, do we? But this is London, and I think it's cold and wet there a lot, even in the summer. They became friends, and Diggory had been sent there to live with his uncle and aunt, and Polly lived with her parents. They met each other, and Polly shared... don't forget to... I'm sorry, the dog is trying to get into my bedroom and it's distracting me. Diggory had been sad because his father was away and his mother's very sick. She might even die, and he'd been sent to live with his aunt and uncle. That kind of gives us a little bit more insight into what Diggory's going through. But Polly shared their attic. They lived in row houses, which reminds me I was going to pull up a picture of a row house so I could show you. So maybe I'll do that for our Zoom class that we're going to be doing in a little bit. And through the attics, there were doors that led to all the attics in the street. So they were going and they were trying to get to the empty house, which was the other side of Diggory's. But instead, they stepped into Uncle Andrew's private, super secret study. And there were yellow and green rings. And at first, he was acting kind of wacko, smiling, but smiling and eager, kind of scary smile. And he offered to give Polly a ring. He had shared he had been doing an experiment and the guinea pig, and it seemed to be looking good. However, guinea pigs couldn't talk, and he couldn't tell them how to get back. I don't know about you, but when I read that, I thought, get back from where? Where did the guinea pig go? What is his experiment? But Polly was so fascinated by the rings, she went to them. And noticed they were humming, they were making a noise. And Diggory yelled and tried to stop her, but she put the ring on and poof, she was gone. Can you summarize that and tell your parents about chapter 1 of the Magician's Nephew? Summarizing is a really good skill. It teaches you how to put together your thoughts, and it will help you remember chapter 1. Hope you had fun with chapter 1. I'll be back soon with chapter 2. I'm excited. Are you getting into the story yet? Bye.